Hey friends, I am super excited to be back with you. I thought about putting this podcast to bed, but there are still more ways that I want to push you, challenge you, grow myself through sharing with you. And you're probably wondering where I've been. It's been a couple years, but let me tell you, there have been some good highs and some really hard lows. When I initially stopped podcasting, probably about 2.5 years ago, it was because my job was amping up. My boss had been let go, and I took over everything in my department. Life was good and so full that I didn't have space for podcasting. So I dropped it. I always hoped to come back. My husband recently was like, why don't you change your Instagram? Like, you're not podcasting anymore. And I was like, I'm going to. Just leave me alone. So I kind of want to talk about the hardest thing in the last 2.5 years, or in one of the hardest things that's ever happened in my life, was losing my job. The gut punch, the moment everything changed in September of 2024. So let's just jump right in. It was an ordinary day. I got the call, the awkward 2-minute script they have to read you. My two bosses, people I deeply respected and genuinely had fun with, told me I was being made redundant. Redundant, what a word, hey? You never think of it in terms of yourself, that's for sure. I knew that wasn't the real reason, but I didn't find out for a long time, for about 8 months, as to what the real reason was. But in that call, they just talk to you for 2 minutes, maybe, and the call ends and everyone's gone. And later I would find out that someone I trusted had told a lie about me, and I wasn't even asked about it. I was just let go. But at that moment, all I knew was that I'd lost the best job I ever had. And to go from that high, that feeling irreplaceable, to realizing you are completely replaceable, it guts you. And here's the thing, you are always replaceable at work. And probably the more that you think you're not, you probably are. You're never replaceable at home. So to talk about the climb and then the context behind the fall, I'll back up a little bit. When I stepped away, like I said, it was because my job had amped up. I had no extra space in my life. I was excelling, getting promoted, running on adrenaline. I loved the people that I worked with. We worked our asses off, but we were on fire. We were changing the face of insurance. And that might sound like dorky to you, but I've been in this industry for 20 years and I love it so much. And I just want to see it evolve and grow and advance. So I'm very passionate about it. And my boss called me a rock star all the time. He told me that my runway at the company was incredibly long. And honestly, I was thriving. And my two bosses, neither of whom I think had the directive to let me go, they were just given that, they were people who I shared memories with, like on the road, singing Dashboard Confessional at the top of our lungs, or getting each other's breakfast or coffee orders, or playing pranks on April Fools. Losing this job was also the death of those friendships. And that was a crazy element that I never would have anticipated for someone who loses a job. I worked way too much, sure, but I had come alive. I was traveling across Canada, selling our story and building something that really mattered to me. I got to go to head office in Barbados. I traveled to Mexico for a client convention. My input was turning into incredible output, and I was sky high. I felt important. I felt needed. I felt unstoppable. And before I knew it, that job became my identity, my worth, and my idol. It was the most money I'd ever made. It was exciting and ever-changing, and I was just alive. But then came the crash, the fallout, and the grief. So when I lost that job, it wasn't just about losing income, although my husband would say it was for him. But for me, it was like losing a piece of me. And now I call myself a recovering overachiever, the kind who, writes out a to-do list, then does something that's not on it, then adds it to the to-do list just so I can cross it off. But I don't miss deadlines. I don't drop balls. And suddenly I was dropped. I was wrecked. Like, I always wish that I could have talked to the people at the company to tell them how much that hurt me. Ugly crying in the shower, questioning everything I've ever done. Wrecked. I remember calling my husband and my girlfriends, and we were just jaws on the floor, because I had built my whole sense of worth on performance, on being the best, on being the one who delivered, the one you could trust to get the job done. And the truth is, statistically, losing your job is one of the 5 most stressful life events, right up there with divorce and moving. But for high performers, I don't know. I feel like it hits different. I feel like I've experienced a lot of death in my life, and this was so different, but similar. And we wrap so much of who we are in what we do. So then I moved into the valley, the stages of grief sitting in the silence, starting with denial, the deep stunned, like this can't be happening belief. I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that something I'd poured myself into was just done. I remember thinking like, I have emails I need to reply to. I have an event in 3 days.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Like, I have emails I need to reply to. I have an event in 3 days. Like, who's going to handle those things? And then it moved into anger, like the rage of like, how could this happen to me? What happened? What went wrong? Like, why did no one ask me? Like, going crazy. I felt like I was going crazy. And then bargaining. I started rewriting the past in my head. Like, maybe I could find the version of the story where I still had my job. I even thought about calling people at the company just to like clear the air, as if it would undo it. That's the dangerous thing about bargaining, though. You start thinking maybe your worth was negotiable. Maybe if you'd done something more different or more or something, they would have kept you. And then I moved into the depression phase, the gut punch mornings without calendar invites, saying goodbye to my kids as they went to school and knowing that like I really didn't have anything on the go that day. Although I will say I did become incredibly busy by the end of my unemployed days. I was like really busy. I was like, I don't need a job. I need to just manage my personal life. It's very active and busy. But the silence of not being needed was hard. The way you start to wonder, like, who am I if I don't have that title? I remember scrolling LinkedIn and half job hunting, half self-punishing. But I'd see my old coworkers posting about new wins and it stung every single time. You know, when you go on to like Facebook or something and you're like, show me less of this. I have clicked that so many times and I feel like LinkedIn never got smarter. But maybe I needed that sting. You know, I could go from scrolling to sobbing to praying, usually in the same hour. It's the season of my life where I felt the smallest, the most uncertain, and yet somehow that's where God met me the most. And then finally, acceptance. Though honestly, this one only came in the last couple months, and not the fake kind, not the I'm fine mask we put on, which I was probably putting on when I was in the, you know, like the depression or the bargaining stage, telling people that, but it wasn't true. I stopped trying to push through the pain and started walking with it. It sounded more like, okay, God, I still don't get it, but I trust you and I feel like good is going to come out of this. I didn't want to say that out loud, but I really knew it to be true. But acceptance didn't mean forgetting what happened. It meant no longer letting it define me. It meant I could start making jokes about being let go and being unemployed, which is always super fun for me. But I think the hardest part was that I knew I had to sit in it, which is just like, if you know, you know. Like when someone says, like, I knew I couldn't go around it. I couldn't go over it. I just had to sit in it and keep taking steps forward every day. And friends would say to me, like, a year from now, you're going to look back on this and just be like, so glad it happened. And I was like, shut up. Like, it doesn't help me in this moment. Right. But God didn't swoop in and fix everything. He just walked with me through it. And I was very aware of God's presence with me every day. But it wasn't like, I thought it was going to be like someone was going to call and be like, listen, I think you're incredible. I heard you lost your job. We want to hire you immediately as the VP of sales at our company. Like that's how I thought God would show up in this moment, because there'd been an injustice that was done to me. I was wronged. I was treated incredibly unfairly. And that's, especially for the effort I put out. And I felt like that's how God was going to show up. And that's not what happened. But he was with me in those quiet mornings with the loss of purpose. He was with me at the awkward parties when people said, so what do you do? Through the moments where my worth wasn't based on a job title or a paycheck. Suddenly I was just stripped down to being a child of God who is loved, who is cared for, who is protected. Through the moments, I couldn't see it at the time, but God was pruning me, redirecting, protecting me from the ladder that I was killing myself to climb. Now, there's a book called The Gap and the Gain, and it's by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And in this book, full disclosure, I haven't read it. I blame my dear friend Jess Yorg from Your Organized Life on Instagram. She's she's basically my personal book club. She sends me screenshots and highlights, so I'm living the Cliff Notes version of this book. But the gist is, most of us live in the gap, always focused on what we don't have, what didn't work out, how far we are from the ideal. That keeps us striving and never satisfied. The gain is different. This is so cool. It's measuring backward, looking how far we've come from where we started. And if you take a second, I like to pause a podcast and like think that through in my own mind. Where can you measure backward? Maybe you say from like the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the last 20 years, but measure backward and see how far you've come. It's gratitude with context. It's realizing progress is progress, even if the destination changed. This is a quote from the book. I'm going to read you an excerpt, but as the grief expert and psychiatrist Gordon Livingston, MD, explained, the stories of our lives, far from being fixed narratives, are under constant revision. We are able to color our past, either happy or sad. The past is nothing more than the meaning you ascribe to it. Traumatic experiences can be changed. They are not fixed. Motivation is often broken into two categories: approach or avoid. Being in the gap leads you to avoid your past. It makes you the victim. It stops you from taking ownership. Being in the gain allows you to transform your experiences into gains and give them the meanings you choose. So when you're in the gain, you immediately turn hard experiences into enhanced growth, meaning, and purpose. Taking time to sit down and think about your experiences is what psychologists call deliberate rumination. It's where you actively think about an experience, proactively create the meaning you want the experience to have for you, and revise your life narrative in a positive way as a result. You frame the experience as a gain so you can move forward powerfully. So when I lost my job, I was sitting deep in the gap. All I could see was what I'd lost: the title, the paycheck, the sense of purpose. But slowly, God started showing me the gain, the growth, the space, the freedom, the rediscovery of who I actually am. And then I started to rebuild and release. And this is where the wild and good part of my story begins. So after the shock, the anger, the why me, I started to sense that just maybe this wasn't a failure. Especially, I don't know, like, because it was so illogical how it happened and what I knew to be true of what I'd done in that role. I don't know, that the why me moments really are still there to some degree. But I started to just know this was a reset. This was a divine pause and breathe moment. If you'd told me that a year ago, I would have rolled my eyes really hard. But looking back now, I see it. God was saying, trust me, I've got you, even when you can't pull yourself up. I used to believe the answer was, I decide, I hustle, I do. I have a thing on my wall in my office that says, dream big, work hard, make it happen. And that's what I've always lived by in business. And yeah, personal development people always say you.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
And yeah, personal development people always say you can decide and do anything, give yourself a high five in the mirror, etc. And there's some truth in that. Mel Robbins' 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing has helped me do a cold dip numerous times, or send an email I didn't want to send, and things like that. Those definitely help. But what about when you can't? What about when you reach the end of your own power? Now, for me, as someone who loves God and is daily in prayer to God, I don't want to do it on my own. I've known that for years and years. And maybe you've never thought of that or heard of that or ruminated on that, as the psychiatrists would say. Psychiatrists, I don't know. Maybe you've never really thought of it that way. What happens when you reach the end of your power? I'd like to go to God well before I'm at the end of my power, but there will come a point for all of us where we are truly at the end of ourselves. And that's what they don't tell you on personal development podcasts and in books. That's where your humanity meets God's mercy. That's where you realize you were created for a relationship with God, not for performance, for rest, not just results. God wants to be your strength, not your backup plan. And now I'm back in sales, but it's different. I'm working for a company I love, in freedom, with peace, and with boundaries. I'm not chasing titles anymore. I'm chasing purpose. And it's kind of funny because when I got the job I have now, my title is just like, I think, sales executive for Western Canada or something. And this is the lowest title I've had in years. And I was tempted when I got the job to ask my boss, like, can I be a senior sales executive? And then I thought, no, you are no longer a slave to your ego. Just do a job that you enjoy. I mean, get the pay you want. Let's be real. That always is super important to me. Because I got to pay, guys, and it's real expensive in this world. What does the title even matter? It doesn't even matter if it doesn't hold depth and you can still be canceled in an instant. It doesn't matter. So choosing to let my ego stay crushed, go forward in humility, and do a job that I enjoy, and setting the title aside. Yesterday, my boss said to me, like, they might not respond to your email. You might need to CC like our owner and our CEO. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Because I used to be a person that people would respond to because of title. It makes me like want to not respond to people because of title, because it makes me want to just like change that whole narrative, right? Because your worth isn't in your title. So at a recent conference, I got to see some of my old coworkers, and I ignored someone I used to care about for 2 straight days. It was surreal, like not like me at all, but I just wasn't ready. And healing takes time, right? And there is so much wisdom, the lesson, the freedom. Success isn't always a blessing if it costs you your peace. An image is the world's cheapest currency. And sometimes rejection is God's protection. I swear my adrenal glands, every part of my body was like vibrating so much higher than it was supposed to in that role. Like, yes, it was fun, but it was taking a toll on my body for sure. And I didn't even notice that. And it probably took me 2 months to come off of that high that I was on. And I thought I wanted the title, the VP of sales title. That was the ladder I was climbing. But now I don't want it anymore. Finally see that my worth is not in the climb. It's in the calling. It's in how I show up every day. It's in how I treat people. It's in how I motivate those around me and get them excited for what we're doing in business. So the invitation, the season ahead, we're getting real about things personal development books don't tell you. What happens when your motivation runs out, when your identity collapses, when you come to the end of yourself and you realize you can't do this life on your own strength, or you don't want to do this life on your own strength. We're talking about the faith side of personal growth, where you stop striving and you start trusting, when you let God walk you through the hard stuff, not just out of it. Because losing my job, it wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of something way better. It was how I found peace, purpose, and me again. So just a quick Bible verse I want to share with you from Philippians 4, verses 12 and 13. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So if you have more questions about this episode, or you want to chat further, send me an email, morejodypodcast@gmail.com. If you want to talk more about a relationship with God and what that looks like or what that means, please get in touch with me. It is such a gift to have this podcast, to have this outlet, to share my heart with you. And this episode was like a long time coming, because there were a number of months where I couldn't even have imagined pouring this out. So thank you for holding my pain and being with me today and listening. And feel free to get in touch with me or share this episode with a friend who would benefit from hearing it. God bless you. Have a great day.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.